And if they're going to kill the automotive industry entirely, what's left? And if you're going to kill the automotive industry entirely, how are people going to get around? How are people going to go out shopping? How are they going to go leisure activities? How are they going to spend money? And surely the point of an economy is that you need people to spend money to keep that economy going. At some point, we have to reconcile which the very real concerns about the environment and public health and what have you, with the reality of people need to do stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, brown car guy.
No, you're supposed to do it the brown car guy way, the way you did it when we first connected.
Brown car guy, something like that. That was a little bit out of tune, though, wasn't it? No, that wasn't.
It was a little bit, and it needs a little bit more passion as well.
Bit more practice then. All right, I'll work on that for next time. So yesterday I cooked dinner and then I was doing some washing up. And whilst I was doing my washing up, I was watching a YouTube video of you walking around London talking about Euro 7. And
yes.
I've not looked at it in any great detail yet, so I saw the thumbnail and I thought, that's something that I need to know about if Euro 7's coming in. And your video was very good, and I thought, right, let's have a chat about what Euro 7 is all about, because there's some implications that are going to be coming further down the line. So can you give us a very brief synopsis of what you said in your video yesterday, and we'll see if we can extrapolate some more from it.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is coming, and I think it's going to have a very significant impact going forward. So it's coming on the 1st of July, 2025. This is what we know at the moment.
This is so that's all new cars built from 1st of July will need to be Euro 7.
Euro 7 compliant, yeah. And unlike, say, for example, Euro 4 that we've had with petrol cars, where, technically it came in around 2006, but a lot of cars as far back as the 90s actually did comply because, it was only based on nitrogen dioxide emissions. But unlike that, well, obviously with Euro 6, it also included particle emissions with diesels. Euro 7 is a whole new level completely.
Yeah.
Because not only will it look at tailpipe emissions in terms of, nitrogen dioxide and particulate emissions, but it's also looking at particulate emissions from your brakes and your tires. And they've got a whole bunch of other things in there, which also encompasses EVs. So it covers all fuel types. So it'll cover petrol, diesel, hydrogen, and electric. It'll cover everything. And even with EVs, there's also additional layer of complexity in the sense that they're going to be looking at setting a minimum standard for the longevity of the battery life. So the battery life has to be, I think it's 80%, has to be there after 10 years or something like that. Again, not a lot of this, as far as I understand, I don't think everything yet is cast in stone, but there are some details that we've got. So, for example, the particulate emissions have to be, the maximum is 60 milligrams per kilometer. At the moment, we've got 80 milligrams per kilometer with the Euro 6. So that's a reduction of 20 milligrams per kilometer. And then when we're looking at brake and particulate emissions, we're talking about, and this is really weird because Euro 7 is kind of like a graduated thing. It's not even like a one rule and then we'll wait for Euro 8. No, Euro 7 is like it's 7 milligrams emissions allowed from brakes and tires, which will then reduce to, I think it's 3 in about 10 years' time, so 2035.
Wow.
So, it's extraordinary because this is a new level of Euro emission standard that not only looks at today, but is already looking at the future as well.
I find this pretty scary because, as we know, each new Euro emission standard that gets introduced impacts the way we are charged to drive our cars because whether your car is Euro 2, 3, 4, 5, that depends how much it costs for you to drive your car in certain places. So it's a way I just feel like it's always moving the goalposts, isn't it? So you've been pushed out of your Euro 4 car because you needed to get a Euro 5 and then a 6. And then you think, great, I've got my Euro 6 car. I'm going to be sweet for a little while. And then Euro 7 comes in, and Euro 7 seems to be, like you say, it's a whole new ball game to Euro 6 because we're no longer just talking about emissions. We're talking about brakes and tires as well. So, and do you think this is... Am I right to be concerned that this new thing is coming in as someone who's passionate about old cars?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I think so. I think, obviously, the one good thing is that old cars will remain and there will always be exemptions for old cars beyond a certain age. As you know, even today, we've got a 40-year rolling historic car rule. But also don't forget that, there will be restrictions on certain areas. So, for example, like I know that at the moment the mayor is completely denying that there will be any changes to ULEZ in the future, but it's not inconceivable, is it, really, Geoff? It's not inconceivable that when Euro 7 comes in 2025, they say, right, well, 2026, you have to be Euro 7 compliant. Otherwise, you all will pay ULEZ. So if people today have gone out and bought that Euro 6 car or that Euro 4 petrol car thinking, right, that's it, I'm sorted now, you could find in 2025 or 2026 that you're not, because the rules of the parameters have been changed yet again. The goalposts have been moved yet again. So that's always possible. And I think the other problem with the Euro 7 is the layers of complexity that it's introducing. Because when it's talking about measuring, I mean, how are you going to measure particulate emissions from brakes and from tires? I mean, at the moment, we don't even have that data for existing cars. I don't believe that data is there. Now, you could say that, well, when the car is sold, you measure it at that point and then you lock it off. But actually, reading what I was reading the other day, it sounds like there will be ongoing monitoring. So they're talking about introducing systems on the car which will continuously on an ongoing fashion monitor the emissions coming from the tires and brakes. Whether there's going to be little capture devices or what, I don't know how that's going to work. But one thing is for sure, that's going to add a whole more level of cost and technical complexity to a car. There's more things to go wrong, and there's more things that you're paying for when you're buying a new car.
This is what I understand from watching your video yesterday. So yeah, as you said, so modern cars are going to be effectively fitted with sensors that will measure the level of harm that your tires and brakes are doing. So we're not just talking about brake pad wear sensors. We're not just talking about tire pressure sensors and tire depth sensors. This is somehow we don't know yet. We don't know how they're going to do it, but they're somehow going to be measuring the amount of stuff that's coming off the tires and the brakes. And if it's going to be measuring that stuff as well, we have to assume that it's going to be reporting back, because there's no point a car measuring actively how much emissions is coming off the brakes if it's not then sending those numbers to the person who's in charge of billing you for that, because that's what this is about, isn't it? So your car,
absolutely, it's meant to make money, yeah. But I mean, it is. I mean, this now we're entering the realms of speculation. But I mean, I suppose you could maybe at an MOT, you could look at the annual amount that you've used or something like that. I have seen. I went to a show a couple of years ago at the Excel Center, and there was a company that creates a box that captures the tire particulate emissions. The idea for this company is that they capture it and then they recycle it. So they collect all the rubber and then they recycle the rubber. So it's a nice idea. It's a really good idea.
Yeah.
And so they had a contraption that sat behind the wheel arch of the front and the back on all four wheels. And it would basically be capturing the particulate emissions from the tire in that way. Now, I mean, that's nice if you saw, for example, for commercial fleets or for buses or for lorries where you're doing that and it actually would really make a difference. But if you have to suddenly introduce that to imagine how many times you lose a mud flap. Imagine every time you have to lose one of those things and you have to get a new one of those and stick it onto the car. What's that going to be? 250 quid every time you need to do that.
But as well, like, you start talking about potholes and punctures and the quality of the roads, and then you look at traffic, and if you go into low emission zones and low traffic neighborhoods and all this sort of stuff, you say, well, hang on a minute. I'm being charged a fee based on how much emissions my car produces at the tailpipe, at the brakes, and at the tyres. Now I'm being forced to go down a 20 mile an hour street in stop-start traffic to get to a bollard at the end that I can't go around. Let's say we're all driving 100 miles at 60 miles an hour on a perfect road. That's fine. Everybody is producing the same amount roughly from their brakes and their tyres and, arguably from the tailpipe. But when you start adding in these like totally random measurements, it's like, how does that apply in the real world? Because the real world is so different to the labs anyway. So if we're trying to save the planet and cut down on emissions, surely we should make the roads flow better and make the roads better quality. But that never seems to be mentioned, does it?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's fundamental, where you think about the fact that as in the cities, we've slowed traffic down. We've called traffic calming devices that we've used. We've got detours, we've got all roadworks, we've got contraflows, and all of these things have slowed traffic down. And that's made things worse, both in terms of tailpipe emissions, which is making things worse, but also the stop-go, the brake emissions that you're getting. I mean, if you live in London, I mean, once a week I wash my car. The amount of brake dust on it is just ridiculous, and it's like, and I'm not a hard braker, I mean, I drive that car quite gently. So you will get more